To start draining this radiator, here's the petcock. Usually there's a splash shield that runs from the subframe all the way to the front bumper. This one's missing, and if you have yours, there should be a hole here, so you can either reach from up top or from the side and unscrew this, and then it'll drain through that shield, but you'll have to take it off anyway so you can get to these lines and hoses. But basically, just go ahead and unscrew this and coolant will start coming out. Don't pull this plug out all the way. I made that mistake before and it comes shooting straight back. So just leave it like this. We'll let it drain for a few minutes. While this is draining, I'm going to remove this plastic piece here. That'll give us access to the 2 bolts that hold the radiator on. And this plastic piece is held on by a bunch of push clips that go from one side to the other. So with your trim tool, go ahead and pop these out. There we go. And there's a bunch of them, so just follow them from the left to from one side to the other and just take them all out. Some of them will break if they're brittle like this, but you can always replace them if you would like to. That should be everything holding in this plastic piece. Okay, now you can grab this, pull it up and out of your way. There we go. That'll expose these two 12 millimeters that hold the radiator on. Let's take off this upper hose. Move the clamp back and twist the hose off. Make sure it has no coolant left in it, which it shouldn't because it's draining, but just get this out of your way. Let's disconnect the cooling fans. I have a little pocket screwdriver that'll help me release the locking tab on this connector. Disconnect that, and then you have the same connector on the other side. Let's disconnect the other side as well. There we go. These are sometimes full of sand, no debris. It makes them get stuck in there. So those are off. Set those to the side. Back underneath, let's close up the drain. That way it stops dripping on us. It has drained enough. So I'll leave it right there. Next I'm going to unplug this temperature sensor here. There we go. And it's actually connected right here onto the radiator. So this is going to have to come undone. Press in the 2 little side tabs. That'll disconnect the retainer here and oops, pull the wiring out. It's also hooked in over here. So once you pull it through, just pop it out like that and leave it to the side. Perfect. Let's get the lower radiator hose off. Pull this clamp back, or pull the hose off with the clamp, whatever works. There may still be some coolant coming out, so be careful. Try to aim it into your collection bucket. There we go. Not much, so that's perfect. Set this hose aside. Now let's move on to the 2 transmission lines. Let's get these transmission lines off. My clamps are in extremely poor condition, so I'm hoping I can somehow at least break them off of here. I'm definitely going to be replacing these. Okay, now you can pull the hose out. Fluid or transmission fluid will come out, so keep that in mind. There we go. Let's get the other one off. I'm also going to be replacing this clamp. It's in very poor condition also, but at least it wants to come off, so that's good. I'm just going to slide it off, grab the hose to break it free, and pull it off of the line. Your new radiator should come with new lines, so that's good. Okay, more transmission fluid. And while I'm at it, I'm just going to take this clamp right off and throw it away and put a new one on. Over right by the battery, you'll see this little fuse and relay box. You can either take the battery hold down off, which as you can see, mine isn't really very secure, or what you can do is on the back of it has a tab that if you press in, you can lift this up off of this retainer. I literally just did it. There we go. You just press on this little tab here. And once you pull this out of the way, you can see this connector right here, which leads down to that temperature sensor that we disconnected, but you have to either disconnect it or pop it off of the radiator. So now let's take this off of the radiator that way, or the fan, I guess it's on the fan shroud, but either way, remove it, and now we can remove the radiator with the fans. Last thing holding this radiator in the car is this bracket here, well, two of them, one on each side. 12 millimeter, let's remove the bolts. There's one, other one right over here. Remove the brackets. Now you can grab onto your radiator with the fans, pull the whole assembly up and out. And here's your old radiator. Of course, we'll have to disconnect the fans, but here it is. So I have my new radiator right next to my old one, and we're going to transfer the fans over. I'm going to start with this one here, 10 millimeter bolts that hold both of them in place. So now just lift it right up, transfer the fan right into the new radiator. Let's bolt it in. Nice and snug. And let's do the same to this other one. So this bolt here for me is not coming out. The nut that's holding it on the bottom side is just spinning in there. So what I'm going to try to do is just break off the plastic fitting on that radiator and hopefully not break this mounting plate for the fan. And hopefully I can get this fan off, and once it's off, I can remove that bolt by holding it with some locking pliers. So here's the situation. I have this nut that was supposed to be stuck in the radiator, but it broke the radiator and came free, so I'm going to put some locking pliers on it, nice and tight. Now from the back side, or the front side I guess, let's try to unscrew it. There we go, that came off, perfect. Now we can transfer this over to the new radiator. Line it up with where it's supposed to bolt on. Everything lines up perfectly. Let's put on the top two. Then I'm going to get a new bolt for here. I'm going to put in these two top ones first, and then I'll grab a new bolt for the bottom. I don't want to use that rusted one. Now let's put this bottom one in. I grabbed another bolt that I had that fits with a little washer. Snug it up. Now this is secure. A couple more things to transfer over. First, the bushings on the bottom here, this is what the radiator sits in, and if these didn't, sometimes they stay with the car, sometimes they don't. If they don't stay with the car, they'll be on your radiator, so just take them off the old one, place them onto the new one. Sometimes they're a little stuck. Okay. Last thing to transfer over is this temperature sensor. You can use a 19 millimeter socket, put it over, and loosen it up. Okay, take it out and inspect it. I'm actually going to clean it, it's a little dirty. Your new radiator is going to have some sort of a plug here to cover the hole. For me, it happens to be an 8 millimeter Allen, but whatever it is for you, take that out and set it aside. And I took the sensor, cleaned it up a little bit, cleaned the threads, and applied some thread sealer. That way it'll make a nice watertight seal. Thread it on, and let's snug it up. There we go. Just going for snug. All right, so grab the new radiator with the fan, or fans, plural, there's 2 of them. Slide them down and make sure that it lines up with the mounting locations on the bottom, which we can always double check once we go there. Once we go there to put the hoses on, but this feels like it did line up. So at this point, in order to secure it up top, let's get the brackets back on, line them up, and they have a little hook that holds them on, but I'm just going to start the bolts in because I'm here, and why not? So there's one, and the other one. Make sure they line up. Start in the bolts and snug them up. Perfect. Let's plug in the fan. Make sure it clicks so that way you know it's secure. And grab this upper radiator hose, slide it back onto the radiator, and let's put the clamp back. Put the clamp back on. I like to put it right where it came from. You'll see the mark on the hose. That helps it seal up the best. Let's reattach this connector here to the fan shroud, plug in the fan, and secure this fuse box back in place. There you go. Now let's go underneath and connect the hoses. Let's get this wire back. Got a little clip here that it secures in. Kind of hard to see, but make sure it's there, and then I'll just run it over here, and might as well plug it in since it's in our hand. Make sure it clicks. Okay. Let's put a new hose clamp on this hose here. There we go. The old one was kind of rusted, and reconnect the hose. Perfect. Snug up the hose clamp. Be careful when you tighten these because they can easily strip out and then you need a new one. So now let's bring the 2 transmission hoses over, get some new clamps on these. There's one. Make sure it bottoms out on the fitting and tighten up the clamp. Okay, do the same to the other one. Oops, forgot the clamp. There we go. Tighten this one up as well. All right. Let's resecure this clip. Perfect. And last but not least, always double check your petcock to make sure it's nice and tight. And at this point, if you have a shield here, I don't, but if you have it, go ahead and put it back. Let's put this plastic cover back on here. It goes underneath the hood latch lever here, and make sure you line it up with all the push clips. Perfect. Let's get the push clips back in. I don't have all of them because some of them broke, but put back whatever you have. I'm going to do one in the middle, one on each side. That way it holds this down. Okay, one on this corner right here. 2 right down here. And I'll see if I can source some more, but for now I'll put my last one right over here. Now let's fill the cooling system. Remove your radiator cap. Set that aside. I have a spill-proof funnel here. It helps a lot when filling and bleeding the system. But if you don't, just make sure you don't make too much of a mess. Tighten this down. Let's fill it with coolant. If you're not sure what to use, you can refer to your owner's manual. I'm using universal coolant, but like I said, details are to be found in your owner's manual. Let's fill it up until it stops bubbling by itself. At that point, we'll turn on the engine and go from there. Okay, it looks like it stopped bubbling by itself. I'm massaging this upper hose just a little bit to hopefully squeeze out some remaining air. But now I actually want to bring the coolant level in the funnel up to about 1/4 of the way up the funnel. That way this is the highest point in the cooling system, and naturally the air is going to want to rise and come out as I run the vehicle. Let's add a little bit to bring it up to about a quarter of the way up the funnel, like I said. Right there's perfect. Now let's start the engine. I want to set the temperature all the way to hot inside, the blower on low or medium. You don't have to max it out. I'm going to keep it on low, and you want the air to blow at the vents. That way you can actually feel the hot air coming through. You want to wait until hot air comes through the vents, and I can feel air, so that's good. Once it starts getting hot, you know the coolant is circulating, warming up, and you also want to pay attention to your temperature gauge right there. Right now it's cold because obviously we just started it, but as long as it stops somewhere halfway through, you know you're good. If it starts going all the way up to the hot, you're overheating. You need to stop the vehicle and wait for it to either bubble up the air that's in the system, or you have a different issue. But if you didn't have an overheating issue before, it should still be fine. So we'll wait for that to warm up fully. Another way to know when it's fully hot or at operating temperature is the cooling fans will start blowing and cooling down the engine. So let's wait for that to happen. So the car ran, it fully warmed up. I had heat inside. The cooling fans did not come on, but both the lower and the top radiator hose were hot, which means the coolant has circulated, the thermostat has opened. So now let's get this funnel off of here. A little trick is if you squeeze this top hose, a couple air bubbles. Anyway, if you squeeze this top hose a little bit, put your plug in on the funnel and then lift as you release the hose, it'll drip less. Now I'm going to put the rest of it in my overflow, and on the side of it, you can see there's this line right here. That's where it has to go up to. That's the full mark. Okay, there we go, right there. Oh, got a little more. There we go. All right, coolant's in here. Let's cap this off, and let's reinstall our radiator cap. There we go. Put the radiator cap back. Close the hood and take it for a road test.